Nikke Osterbach, who's sitting next to Justin, who has been working with us throughout the months preparing for the festival, and you'll hear more from Nikke later. But Nikke created some fantastic digital campaigns for some famous artists.
We did this we crowdsourced video footage for an official live video for his new single "Give Me Love," and we got 6,500 clips altogether from the global fan base. We also asked fans to kind of lift up lyrics and kind of mash up the idea of a lyric video. And as a result of that, we made a video on YouTube. We put that on YouTube, and after 24 hours, we got 220,000 hits, I think. Obviously, that's also his fan base, people wanting to see that content. But it's also a testimony to something that's completely fan-sourced content, stitched together with a small budget, and then simply put up on YouTube, which actually made money out of the streaming hits. So yeah, it's a good example of do-it-yourself.
And he has been hooking us up with all the labels. So another round of applause for Nikke Osterbach over there.
I'm Nikke Osterbach. I have my own company, Saari Limited, where I work with the startups and artist managers on doing do-it-yourself music project ideas and marketing. My background is six years in digital music at Island Records and Atlantic Records here in the UK. And I'd also want to kind of meet with new technology companies and people who actually make stuff happen, to maybe then introduce to labels and artists and managers. So anyone who's watching this, anyone who can actually make stuff happen, I'm trying to put together cool artists to work with hackers to develop cool stuff. So the company name is Saari Limited, S-A-A-R-I Limited, and the website is saarimusic.com. My email is nikke, N-I-K-K-E, @saarimusic.com.
Cedric from representing Native Instruments today at the Music Fest festival. Just showing Track the DJ, the latest app from Native Instruments for iOS, which basically takes all the experience making the Track the Pro software sort of a landmark in club DJing down to the iOS scale. So having quite a good time. Really good sort of bunch of lecturers and a really good crowd. Enjoying the day.
I worked on an iPad app for beatboxers. I beatbox myself. That's it. This app is a looper and allows you to add audio effects to the sound you're putting in and control those audio effects in a hopefully clever way.
From the bits I've seen, Shlomo's awesome beat mixing was quite impressive, and the duo they did with was quite impressive. Other than that, it's just quite interesting to see the sort of variety of people, because you got the sort of slightly hacking, make yourself sort of stuff, the more professional business startups and all of that, and us representing established companies. So no real highlights. I think the highlights is just the variety of people itself.
I have an app series called Soundwand, which is right now a couple apps on the App Store, more coming out, and it's about motion-based musical control and motion-based improvisational instruments. So this first one is the sounds of a harp, and it's like having virtual strings that surround you in space, and you can pluck them with your phone. So it's quite...
Okay, here we go.
So you can tremolo it like that, or you can sweep.
It's something very unusual for a
And there's different scales. So
he had his party robotics over there set up yesterday, and that was just going completely crazy. And it's basically a robot that mixes cocktails based on parameters.
Okay, so you've already logged on to Bartendro.
Yeah.
You're on the website, yeah? Have you picked a drink that you want yet?
Yeah.
How many times have you gone to a conference and then there's an open free bar and this huge line of people and it takes an hour to get a drink? Well, screw that. We can set up a machine to do this process much faster. So we're not trying to replace bartenders. What we're really trying to do is we're trying to make this process easier. This machine isn't going to make the fancy cocktails, right? But it can make the dumbass cocktails and it'll make them really fast.
It's got its own Wi-Fi, so you look for Bartendro, and then the menu pops up.
Alright.
And then you peruse, and then you don't press until you're at the front of the queue.
Alright, it's a good drink.
I'm Robert Kay. The product is Bartendro, and the company is called Party Robotics, and you can find us at partyrobotics.com.
The whole music industry has become really reliant on technology. I mean, with the exception of this sort of slightly inexplicable increase in like vinyl record sales, other physical sales of things are just decreasing completely, and everyone loves streaming music. And some of the guys here today had brilliant things about like new music discovery for people, like, you know, new ways of finding bands that you might like based on someone you're already listening to. And that could be a really huge sort of source of revenue for people in the future, is that if you can kind of accurately predict what music people will like, rather than them just listening to streaming the same stuff over and over again or listening to the same albums, if you can really help people discover new music in an interesting way, then that really will kind of help maybe indie labels or smaller kind of lesser known acts become sort of more famous. So that's something I think that's really going to be necessary. So we've become so reliant on technology that now we need it to be developed even further again, so that we can actually continue to make money in this industry, I suppose.
I think the next is first of all getting the feedback from DJs out there. It's only been out for a couple of months, so it'd be nice to see what people have to think and what people want to change or see developed on. But other than that, I think is integration with other bits of hardware, because touchscreen is great for a certain number of interactions, but it's nice to be able to connect it to other things, so like the sound cards or all that sort of stuff. So it'll be interesting how we can get the existing NI lineup of controllers and stuff, and the iOS and the full Tractor Pro software, all of that to sort of come together into one big mix. If you are planning to use this in a more sort of serious mixing environment, you'll probably want to have a Q output, and you can do that by splitting the stereo output from here, which means that the left-hand channel will become your main mix, and the right-hand channel will become your Q listening mixing, so you can listen to stuff before you send it to the main out. What this allows you to do, obviously, is using a sort of splitter cable to have a bit of more flexible setup, or you can use a bunch of interfaces that are already compatible with the iPad or NI's own Tractor 6 and 10, which will give you full set of outputs for queuing and then for main mixes. It's just the focus on live remixing and creativity. It's the software sort of takes a little bit of the traditional beat matching of DJing out of the equation, just so you can focus on live sampling, remixing, looping, and sort of the highlights of this app are things like the freezing function, which is just a really nice way to kind of get completely new rhythms out of the app just by touching the waveforms and triggering new beats and all of that. So yeah, it's the live creativity, I think, and remixing capabilities which are the best parts of it all. With the higher colored stuff being the hi-hats and the snares and all of that, so quite easily I can see that I've got my kick drum right here, and I've got to have some snare just over there. Through there I can also use Tractor's detection of the tempo and the key detection to get it to recommend me some tracks. It's now pretty much anything for anyone. If you want to make something from scratch, you can do it yourself, or if you want to get a specifically tailored kind of controller to you, there is something out there. So it's quite exciting to see such a wide variety of devices and softwares and developers on sort of working today. And the music itself is just it's so nice to see abilities to get anybody to make music in any way they like, to a sort of any extent, and the way we can so easily learn from any of these new applications and any new controllers and sort of develop our own skills, our own taste and experiences. So quite generally happy with the state of things, even though you probably don't make too much money out of being an artist these days. It's probably more interesting and more experimental, more diverse. The other great thing about this is if you're already a Tractor user and you've got access to Tractor Pro, this will automatically sync to your existing Tractor Pro library. What that means is that if you're a DJ going while traveling around today to some club you'll be mixing tonight, you could use the iPad app as a way to prepare and plan your playlist for the night.
We are at the beginning of a big change. As electronics become easier to design, more and more people are starting to do their own instrument and design. And I think we'll see completely new interfaces and controllers and ways of engaging with music that fits more the creativity than what the music industry, which is very conservative, has been providing until now. We are maybe one tip of the iceberg. at Raleigh, and also the music hack space. But many people want some more expressive instruments, and I think this is what is going to happen.
My name's Alan Place, I'm the founder of New Design, and this is our flagship product, which is called the AlphaSphere. And essentially, the AlphaSphere is a new electronic musical instrument which allows you to manipulate electronic sound with your fingertips. So essentially there's a series of pressure sensitive pads, all of which allow you to kind of manipulate the sound dynamically. So, and there's some accompanying software which allows you to do things like actually loop the music. So you can kind of layer up sounds, samples and sequences, like all within this interface, which acts as a kind of hybrid MIDI controller, sequencer and sampler. Now each of the pads are pressure sensitive, which means that you can kind of basically manipulate the aftertouch data. In this instance, there's a major scale mapped around the 8 pads in the centre, and one of the cool things about that kind of notation arrangement is from one side to the other, that's a perfect fit. So if you were to set it up in a major key, you could have a series of circles of fifths spiralling around the sphere. The original inspiration actually came from looking at music production software and realising that the MIDI keyboard was actually, not designed for electronic music production at all. So the keyboard originally came from the design for the organ and then for the piano. And actually, although there's like a series of dials and wheels and buttons that have been kind of put, attached onto the existing interface, actually for controlling synthesizers, it's not the most natural form. So, the keys themselves, like in the piano, it's all about a felt hammer hitting a steel string, whereas in on an organ it's just about turning the notes on and off. So actually the kind of like subtle kind of dynamics that you can affect in electronic music are not necessarily suited to like just the touch of a key. So in this instance there's some distortion, but you could put something like a low pass filter on that. It was really based on a musical inspiration, and originally it was kind of exploring like an ergonomic form for playing music. So like the way that your hands kind of naturally curve, and like the way that your fingers kind of fit into a position really like lent itself to the kind of thinking behind like the spherical nature of the design. But then having a hexagonal lattice basically is a way of exploring notation in a much more kind of fluid sense than you would, or much less linear sense than you would with a kind of traditional musical instrument. Up here, there's a pentatonic scale, which is again another kind of interesting way, another kind of interesting notational arrangement to map around the sphere. So we've been here at Music Tech Fest demoing the AlphaSphere, and yesterday we're actually at the Analog to Digital conference in the southwest. So we've kind of had a pretty like jam-packed weekend of like demoing the AlphaSphere to all kinds of different people. You can work with any digital audio workstation. So Logic, Pro Tools, Ableton, potentially any digital audio workstation and any VST within that. So there's kind of quite a lot of scope for exploring different kinds of software using the software that we've developed.
It was really interesting to see kind of what Ableton are doing with hardware at the moment, and realise how far they've got to go until they're making like a really truly expressive piece of hardware for music production. I don't want to knock anything that they're doing with software at the moment, but I think ultimately they're still kind of looking much more at the technical side of making something that's easy to manufacture and sell, rather than kind of looking at the musical possibilities of a hardware device. So it was really interesting to get a kind of much more in-depth demo of that product.